There's waiting for you now, bro.
All right, Willard, thank you. Here's a quote from a famous person. For some strange reason, man always uses his highest technology to entertain himself. Do you know who said that? David Crane. If you didn't know that David Crane was a famous person, then you haven't been paying attention to your television set.
With swamps, hungry crocodiles, and lots more. Pitfall, designed by David Crane. Don't miss it.
David Crane uses the highest technology to entertain himself and millions of other people. What he does for a living is design games for Activision. And if you thought video games were just little squares of melted sand jammed into cheap plastic, well, you're right. The only thing is, it's the complicated instructions etched on those pieces of cheap plastic. Those are silicone chips, and it's the programming that's what costs so much. That's what makes bombs fall, pigs walk, and sharks eat submarines. And in the whole country, there's only a handful of computer programmers who know how to make all of this happen on a home television system. Game companies hope to sell more than 100 million game cartridges this year. That success is trickling down to the programmers. With the help of some slick promotion, some designers are even becoming stars in their own right.
David Crane makes the best games.
My favorite designer would probably be Steve Cartwright for Activision.
I think they put their feelings inside their games, and I'd like to see how they react to like other games. I'd like to ask them some questions, what they think about the other games that are out. And
chances are these teenagers will never meet their heroes, for designers are used to keeping to themselves. They do, in fact, seem a little uncomfortable with all their publicity. They would just as soon talk about someone else's work as their own.
Dave's more or less the innovator in the group. In other words, he's always coming up with new types of gameplay. But his one best feature is his displays. Graphically, he's probably one of the top people here.
Steve likes rapid-fire games, and you'll notice that several of his games do have that aspect, the ability to fire missiles very rapidly. Machine gun, it adds excitement to the game, and it's one aspect of excitement you can add to a game. So if you're looking at it that closely, you might see that as a Steve Cartwright trademark.
If you play games every day, maybe you can tell the subtle difference between Cartwright's rapid fire and Crane's swinging vines. Perhaps it's like knowing the difference between producer Steven Spielberg's films and movies made by producer George Lucas, for there is a certain feeling unique to each. Joining us now to talk about video game creations is a creator, Steve Wright. He's a designer with Atari. He's with us here in Burbank, and with us in New York is Arnie Katz, editor of the new magazine entitled Electronic Games. Good morning. Welcome to both of you. Steve, let me start with you. What specific games have you designed?
Well, at Atari, we don't really like to talk about who designed what.
Why not?
Well, because we like to make the game the superstar as opposed to the programmer. But I can say I've done a sports cartridge, an adventure game, a skill and action, and 5 children's television workshop games.
Why shouldn't you get credit if you designed the game?
Well, because it is a corporate product. Okay, these are games by Atari, not games by Steve Wright or some other person. So it keeps more of a corporate image. You're buying Atari products.
Let's bring Arnie Katz into this. Arnie, does the corporate image sell best, or does it work best when someone signs Steve Cartwright's name to a game?
Well, you can't argue with the success that Atari has had, but I think personally that game designers are creative artists like novelists or painters, and they should get the opportunity to sign their work.
Do the best of game designers develop a real style? I mean, aren't these games all technically the same? You either try to avoid oncoming obstacles or rush towards them at an increasing rate of speed. I mean, isn't it all alike?
Not at all. Really, I think that there's a tremendous breadth of possibility in the electronic gaming field. I think we see that in the kind of games that Steve is working on now with the children's computer workshop, the Cookie Monster Munch game, for example, that Atari is going to be bringing out this summer, is a game that teaches young children concepts like directions and counting. On the other hand, there are games that are shoot-em-ups or maze games or adventure games or role-playing games. There's really a whole world of possibilities within electronic gaming.
Arnie, we're being inundated with this stuff right now. I mean, it seems like you can't escape it. Is this going to be just a passing fancy? Is this going to be the Rubik's Cube that winds up in the back of the closet eventually?
Not at all. In fact, I think there's a big difference between the Rubik's Cube, which is a puzzle that's finite, it can be solved, and a game, which is a dynamic process. When you're playing a game, you're trying to analyze a shifting situation, to concoct strategies, to deal with events happening on the screen. And I think that this type of challenge, being intensely interactive, is going to lead to the establishment of a very large hobby group of electronic gamers.
Okay, Arnie Katz, as I thank you. Steve Wright, just one final note. By the time you're through designing a game, you've lived with it for months on end. Do you love it, or are you sick of the sight of it?
Pretty much you're sick of it. It takes so much out of you. You have to pour so much of your soul into it, and you live with it 40, 50, 60 hours a week for 6 to 9 months.
And after all that, you don't sign your name to it. Imagine that. Steve Wright, Arnie Katz, thank you both very much.
Arnie?
In just a moment, Gene Shalit with Jessica Lange. They'll talk about your Tootsie right after these messages.